At 11:43 in the morning on April 7th, Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense released 217 pages of previously classified military communications spanning the final 6 days of March. The documents contained intercept logs, satellite trajectory data, and internal assessments of defensive capabilities that directly contradicted 3 weeks of official American statements about regional stability. Within 90 minutes of publication, the State Department declined to comment. The Pentagon referred all questions to Pacific Command. Pacific Command did not respond to media inquiries. By early evening Eastern Time, the documents had been downloaded more than 400,000 times, translated into 6 languages, and analyzed by defense researchers across 17 countries. Washington had gone completely silent on materials that revealed operational realities officials had spent 3 weeks publicly denying. Subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications before going any further. What Taiwan released this morning is not simply an archival disclosure or a diplomatic gesture. It is documented evidence of defensive system failures whose implications will compound for months regardless of what diplomatic statements emerge in coming days. The pace at which the operational picture is diverging from official communications means you cannot afford to be behind this analysis when the next development breaks. When the next satellite pass confirms what these documents have already established, when the next intercept log surfaces showing patterns officials have characterized as isolated incidents, the analysis will be here. To understand the full weight of what these documents reveal, it is necessary to first understand what Taiwan's missile defense architecture actually represents to American strategic planning in the Western Pacific, because this was not a disclosure about Taiwanese defensive capabilities alone. It was a disclosure about the entire layered defense framework that American military doctrine has positioned as the foundation of deterrence across the Taiwan Strait for nearly 2 decades. Taiwan operates a 3-tier defensive system integrating American Patriot batteries, domestically produced Skybow installations, and nascent Aegis-equivalent radar networks that feed targeting data to both platforms. Those systems were designed, tested, and positioned under direct American technical supervision. The interceptor mathematics, the radar wavelength selections, the positioning geometry, and the engagement protocols all follow specifications developed at United States missile defense facilities and validated through exercises conducted jointly with American forces. Taiwan's defensive architecture is not an independent system that happens to use American equipment. It is an American defensive architecture operated by Taiwanese personnel under strategic guidance that originates in Washington and filters through Pacific Command to Taipei. That integration is the strategic context without which the documents cannot be properly understood. Taiwan did not simply release evidence of its own defensive shortcomings. It released evidence of systemic vulnerabilities in the defensive frameworks American doctrine has assured allies and partners will guarantee security against precisely the threat scenarios these documents describe. The core revelation centers on 6 consecutive days in late March, during which Taiwanese radar systems detected and tracked 43 ballistic missile trajectories consistent with intermediate-range systems launched from mobile platforms operating in Fujian province. The documents provide granular technical detail on each detection event, launch times down to the second, trajectory calculations updated every 3 to 4 seconds during boost phase, altitude measurements, velocity profiles, and projected impact coordinates for every tracked object. Defensive response protocols triggered, interceptor assignments calculated, engagement windows identified, and firing solutions transmitted to battery commanders. Not one interception succeeded. Across 43 separate engagements spanning 6 days, 43 defensive attempts failed to achieve kinetic kill against targets that defensive doctrine explicitly states should present manageable engagement profiles for the systems Taiwan operates. The failure was not random, and it was not the result of equipment malfunction or operator error. The documents include post-engagement technical assessments conducted by Taiwanese engineers working with sensor data recorded during each intercept attempt. Those assessments reveal that defensive systems performed exactly as designed during every phase of the engagement sequence. Radar acquired targets within expected detection ranges, tracking algorithms calculated trajectories within acceptable precision margins. Fire control systems generated intercept solutions matching doctrinal parameters. Interceptor missiles launched within designated timing windows achieved predicted velocities and executed terminal guidance maneuvers consistent with engagement specifications. Every component of the defensive chain functioned according to technical standards. The interceptors simply never came close to their targets. According to the technical assessments included in the released documents, the 43 track missiles employed maneuvering re-entry vehicles that altered trajectory during terminal descent phase using lateral thrust vectoring systems not previously documented in Taiwanese threat assessments or American intelligence briefings. The maneuvers occurred at altitudes between 40 and 60 kilometers, well below the apogee where traditional ballistic trajectories become predictable, but well above the atmosphere density threshold where aerodynamic maneuvering becomes feasible. The thrust vectoring created lateral displacement of up to 12 kilometers from projected impact points calculated during mid-course tracking. Defensive interceptors, which rely on predictions of where targets will be rather than real-time tracking during terminal phase, arrived at coordinates where targets would have been if following ballistic trajectories. The targets were not there. They were 12 kilometers away, having maneuvered after defensive fire control solutions were committed. The documents reveal something more disturbing than simple technical advancement in offensive systems. They reveal that American intelligence assessments provided to Taiwan between January and March explicitly stated that known Chinese intermediate-range ballistic missiles did not possess maneuvering re-entry capability in the altitude band where these maneuvers occurred. The assessments acknowledged high-altitude course correction capability and terminal guidance adjustments in dense atmosphere, but they categorically stated that lateral maneuvering between 40 and 60 kilometers altitude was not operationally deployed on systems likely to be used against Taiwan. Those assessments informed defensive planning, system positioning, and interceptor inventory calculations. Taiwan's defensive posture was calibrated against threat characterizations American intelligence provided. The threat characterizations were wrong, not partially wrong or imprecise, completely wrong about a fundamental capability that renders existing defensive responses inadequate. If the channel is giving you the analysis this situation deserves, the kind that explains mechanisms rather than just reporting events, subscribe now and share this video with anyone trying to understand what is actually happening behind the daily headline cycle. When the next archive release surfaces, when the next technical assessment confirms patterns officials have characterized as anomalies, when the next defensive exercise demonstrates capabilities diverging from public characterizations, the analysis will be here documenting the gap between official statements and operational reality. The economic consequences of what these documents reveal extend far beyond defense budgets or military procurement timelines. They reach directly into the insurance mathematics that underpin trillions of dollars in commercial shipping, semiconductor manufacturing, and financial services dependent on stability assumptions about Taiwan Strait security. Marine insurance rates for commercial cargo transiting the Taiwan Strait increased by 47% in the 18 hours following document release. That increase reflects actuarial reassessment of military risk based on evidence that defensive systems previously assumed adequate have demonstrated systematic failure against deployed offensive capabilities. Insurance underwriters are not making political statements. They are pricing risk based on documented evidence that defensive architecture cannot perform the functions official assessments have guaranteed. Semiconductor manufacturing facilities in Taiwan produce 63% of global advanced chip supply and 92% of the most sophisticated processors that power everything from smartphones to weapon systems to automotive electronics to medical devices. The economic value of that production exceeds $700 billion annually. Financial instruments worth approximately $3 trillion in equity value, bond holdings, and derivative contracts depend directly on assumptions that those facilities will continue operating without military disruption. Those assumptions rest on deterrence frameworks that Taiwan's document release has now demonstrated rest on inaccurate threat assessments and inadequate defensive responses. The actuarial mathematics of ensuring those facilities, financing their expansion, and pricing the securities tied to their output all changed the moment 217 pages of classified intercept logs became public evidence. Shipping companies operating container vessels through the Taiwan Strait handle approximately 44% of global containerized trade volume. Routes through the strait save 7 to 9 days transit time compared to alternative routing south of the Philippines. That time savings translates to fuel costs, schedule reliability, and inventory management efficiency worth approximately $11 billion weekly to global supply chains. Insurance premiums for vessels transiting the strait increased by 38% in the 24 hours after document release. The premium increase alone adds approximately $400 million in weekly costs to shipping operations. Those costs cascade through supply chains into consumer prices for electronics, automotive components, industrial machinery, and finished goods that depend on trans-Pacific shipping routes. The documents Taiwan released created a measurable, immediate, quantifiable increase in the cost structure of global trade that consumers will experience as price increases on products ranging from replacement smartphones to automobile parts to household appliances within the next 60 to 90 days. The broader strategic question that emerges from assembling all of these elements is the one that defense analysts across the ideological spectrum are beginning to ask with increasing urgency. If American intelligence assessments provided to Taiwan systematically underestimated deployed offensive capabilities to a degree that rendered defensive planning inadequate, what does that reveal about the quality of intelligence assessments underpinning American force posture, alliance commitments, and strategic calculations across the entire Western Pacific theater? Taiwan is not an intelligence collection afterthought. It is among the most heavily surveilled regions in the world, monitored by American satellite constellations, signals intelligence platforms, and human intelligence networks that have operated continuously for 7 decades. If capabilities deployed in Fujian province escaped accurate characterization despite that surveillance intensity, what capabilities deployed elsewhere remain undetected or mischaracterized in ways that could produce similar defensive inadequacies? Both American and Chinese officials are projecting confidence that existing frameworks remain adequate to manage escalation risks and maintain stability. The battlefield reality these documents describe suggests something considerably more complicated. The most significant defensive system failures documented in the released materials arrived just days after American officials were publicly stating that Taiwan's defensive architecture provided robust capability against anticipated threat scenarios. That contradiction may be the most revealing data point in the entire archive. It suggests either that official assessments were based on incomplete intelligence that recent developments have overtaken, or that officials were publicly characterizing defensive adequacy they knew private assessments did not support. Neither explanation suggests competence or transparency in the communications reaching allied governments, partner nations, or American citizens whose security depends on accurate characterization of military capabilities and strategic risks. The documents include something that has received insufficient attention in initial coverage, but carries profound implications for understanding what Taiwan's leadership calculated when deciding to release classified materials. The final 37 pages contain formal requests from Taiwan's defense officials to American counterparts, asking for technical assessments of the maneuvering re-entry vehicle capabilities their radar systems had documented. Those requests were submitted between March 28 and April 2. The requests asked specifically whether American intelligence had detected similar capabilities, whether defensive countermeasures existed, and whether threat assessments provided to Taiwan required revision in light of observed performance. According to the documentation Taiwan released, none of those requests received substantive responses before Taiwan's government decided to publish the complete archive. American officials either could not or would not provide answers to direct questions from a partner government about defensive inadequacies that American intelligence assessments had failed to anticipate. That communication failure is what transforms document release from diplomatic embarrassment into strategic crisis. Taiwan did not release these materials to score political points or generate media attention. Taiwan released them because American officials would not answer questions about defensive vulnerabilities that Taiwanese forces had documented through direct observation. The release was not a disclosure. It was an accusation delivered through evidence publication. Taiwan is stating through document release that it can no longer rely on American intelligence assessments or defensive assurances that recent events have demonstrated are systematically inadequate. That loss of confidence in American technical competence has consequences extending far beyond Taiwan. Every partner nation operating defensive systems under American technical guidance, every ally basing force posture decisions on American intelligence assessments, every government that has accepted American characterizations of threat capabilities and defensive adequacy is now examining whether they face similar vulnerabilities rooted in intelligence failures or deliberate misrepresentation. Japan operates Aegis destroyers and Patriot batteries using targeting data and threat assessments provided through the same intelligence channels that supplied Taiwan with the characterizations these documents have now revealed as inadequate. South Korea's defensive architecture against northern missile threats relies on American radar data, satellite tracking, and threat assessments from the same analytic infrastructure that failed to detect or accurately characterize the maneuvering re-entry capabilities Chinese systems demonstrated against Taiwan. The Philippines, Australia, and Thailand have all accepted American defensive equipment and strategic guidance based on threat assessments generated by intelligence systems that Taiwan's document release suggests are producing systematically flawed characterizations of deployed capabilities. The insurance cascade that began with shipping and semiconductor facilities is now extending into defense procurement budgets and alliance cost-sharing negotiations. If existing defensive systems cannot perform the interception missions they were designed to execute, then the multi-billion-dollar procurement programs supplying those systems to partner nations are purchasing inadequate capabilities at premium prices. Japan has committed $87 billion over the next decade to defensive system acquisitions based on threat assessments that Taiwan's documents suggest require fundamental revision. South Korea's defensive modernization program carries a price tag of $63 billion. Every partner nation operating American defensive equipment faces the same calculation. Either continue procurement programs based on threat assessments now known to be inadequate, or demand comprehensive reassessment of both threats and defensive responses before committing additional resources to systems that documented evidence suggests cannot perform required missions. Here is where the complete picture stands on day 3 following Taiwan's document release. 43 documented defensive failures across 6 consecutive days, 0 successful intercepts against maneuvering re-entry vehicles that American intelligence assessments stated were not operationally deployed. Insurance rate increases totaling $800 million weekly across shipping and semiconductor sectors, $3 trillion in financial instruments dependent on Taiwan Strait stability, now priced against evidence of systematic defensive inadequacy. American officials refusing substantive response to direct questions from partner government about vulnerabilities American intelligence failed to detect. Allied nations across the Western Pacific beginning comprehensive reassessment of defensive postures based on threat characterizations they can no longer trust. Taiwan achieved all of this with 217 pages of classified documents that Washington has still not officially acknowledged, explained, or disputed. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. When the next partner nation releases materials contradicting official American assessments, when the next defensive exercise demonstrates capabilities diverging from public characterizations, when the next intelligence failure produces consequences officials cannot contain through selective disclosure, the analysis will be here. Evidence first. What it means for security, what it means for economics, what it means for the framework stability depends on, always. Leave one question in the comments before you go. That can intelligence systems designed for Cold War threats accurately characterize capabilities developed specifically to exploit their collection gaps, or are current assessments systematically underestimating deployed systems in ways that render defensive planning inadequate across multiple theaters? Every response gets read and considered. This is the analysis that documents what official statements will not address.